There's been this dumb discussion going on the internet where people are competing on who is the loneliest and least loved. And for those living under a rock, Truecel and Fakecel stand for the word incel, which means involuntary celibate. Or in broth terms, it's just having no bitches and being undesirable for women. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it all just started 'cause of this larpers that started to upload content pretending to be incels when you can clearly see that they are not. But anyways, folks, today we are watching how pure of a cell you really are. I'm bringing 9 signs, and for every sign you have, I'll have to revoke a little bit of your Truecel license. By the way, this video is kind of irony, so please don't take it seriously. Starting easy. Of course you can't be a Truecel if you had sex already. 'Cause if you've had sex before, congratulations bro, you're already disqualified. I don't care if it happened once, not even if it was awkward. I don't care if you fumbled the easiest lay in human history and she blocked you the next morning. Doesn't matter. You made it past the tutorial. You don't get to sit here fighting over who's the bigger Truecel anymore. Now, 'cause I already know someone's typing, "Oh, but wizard, what if I paid for it?" Yeah, we're gonna let the council decide that one. The point is, being a Truecel isn't just about being single. Plenty of people are single. Hell, even some of them by choice. Others 'cause they just got out of a relationship. Some of them are actually too busy for it. A Truecel doesn't have those options. That's kind of the whole point. You don't wake up and decide, you know what? I'm taking a break from dating. Dating took a break from you, not the other way around. Bet that some of y'all are already eliminated with this one. But anyways, moving on to the second point, and continuing with the obvious ones. Being popular. This one's almost unfair, 'cause I don't mean being the golden boy of your generation, not even of your class. I'm just talking about being recognizable, even on your own classroom. You know, people knowing your name and stuff. If you were actually popular in high school or college. Yeah, I'm gonna have to revoke another one of your Truecel badges. Popularity is basically social proof. It doesn't even matter why you're popular. Maybe you played football, or maybe you were the funny guy. Hell, it can even be that everyone just knew you because you wouldn't shut up in class. Doesn't matter. The point is, people knew you. That's already a huge advantage. One thing I don't think enough people realize is that the way people treat you isn't just about looks. Like, not 100%. Sometimes people aren't even judging you. They're judging whatever reputation got to them before you did. If everybody already thinks you're cool, funny, or worth talking to, girls usually start with a much better first impression than if you're just some random dude standing in the corner. Like, who even is this guy? That's why popularity kinda sometimes snowballs. People assume there's a reason everyone likes you, so they become a little more open before you've even said anything. Meanwhile, if nobody knows who you are, well, you're starting from 0. Or below 0, depending on the build you spawned with. That's why I always laugh when people say, "Bro, just put yourself out there, bro." As if showing up is the hard part. Showing up is low-key easy. Walking into a room where nobody knows you, where nobody's expecting you, and nobody really cares whether you leave 5 minutes later. That's a completely different game. If you've been popular for most of your life, chances are you've never really had to experience that. And if that's the case, congratulations. You're slightly less Truecel than you thought. Alright, but the third point is, you have documented success with women. This one doesn't even require a relationship. If you've been on a date before, a real one, not the type of, we accidentally ended up walking to the bus stop together, an actual date. Yeah, I'm taking another point away. And before somebody goes, "Bro, it was only one date." Exactly. That's all it takes. You know that the hardest part isn't getting into a relationship. It's proving that somebody, somewhere, looked at you and thought, okay, I'm gonna give this guy a chance. That's a completely different position from someone who's never experienced that even once. That's why I always find it funny when people say they're literally incels after one bad breakup. Men, like you had a girlfriend, dummy. It's like if you were a retired athlete walking into a hospital and asking cancer patients if they also miss running. Like, bro, read the room. The point isn't whether it worked out. It's that, at least once in your life, reality showed you that dating was possible. A Truecel doesn't have that. He doesn't know if it's going to happen next week, next year, or ever. It's just a dream for them. And that uncertainty slowly starts changing the way you look at yourself, even if you try really hard not to let it. Now, having good mental health. All right, I know what this sounds like. But hear me out. If you're genuinely happy most of the time, I don't know, man. That's looking a little Fakecel to me. Now, before Reddit psychiatrists show up in the comments, no, I'm not saying every lonely guy is depressed, even though it's almost always the case. And no, I'm definitely not saying mental illness is some kind of achievement. That's not the point. Don't celebrate that. What I am saying is that prolonged isolation does things to your brain whether you like it or not. Human beings aren't built to spend years feeling invisible. At some point, it starts leaking into everything else. You stop texting people first because you're tired of feeling like you're bothering them, and you start assuming that the silence means rejection. Am I being clear? Then one day you catch yourself overthinking a 2-word reply from somebody who probably won't even read your message. It sneaks up on you. I believe no one wakes up one morning thinking, damn, I think years of isolation have fundamentally changed the way I see myself. It happens so slowly that you don't even notice. You just adapt until the version of you that's constantly expecting rejection starts feeling normal. That's why I always cringe a little whenever somebody says, just love yourself first, bro. Like, sure, that's probably good advice, but it's also a lot easier to believe you're worthy of love when you've actually received some. If every meaningful interaction you've had keeps ending the same way, your brain eventually stops treating rejection as an exception. It just become evidence. Once that happens, it's just over. Climbing out of that hole becomes a whole lot harder than people think. And of course you can't be that lonely if you are slightly attractive. That's point 5, by the way. This one always starts arguments, because most of the LARPers that said they were incels were visibly attractive. So if you're at least slightly attractive, there's a decent chance you're not a Truecel. You're just picky. Yeah, I said it. But no, I'm not talking about male models. I'm talking about the guy who's maybe a 6, maybe even a 5.5, decent face, normal height, doesn't have the incel phenotype, the kind of guy who says, bro, dating is impossible nowadays. Meanwhile, he rejected 3 girls last month because they weren't his type. Not necessarily attractive girls, they could be fat or not very cute, but regardless, that's not the same thing. One thing I've noticed is that a lot of people confuse having no options with not liking the options they have. Those are 2 completely different experiences. If you're attractive enough that people occasionally show interest, even if they're not the people you wanted, you're already playing a different game. You have the luxury of standards. A Truecel doesn't really think in terms of standards. He's usually wondering whether anyone is ever going to look at him that way in the first place. That's why conversations online get so weird. You have one guy saying, dating is over, because he only matches with girls he doesn't find attractive. Then another guy reads that, who hasn't had a single girl show interest in him his entire life. And it's just weird. Those 2 people describing the same reality, but they're talking about completely different problems. Said that, we have to talk about having a normie social status. Alright, this one's a dead giveaway. If you've got a normal social life, you're probably not a Truecel. Notice I said normal. Again, I'm not talking about being the most popular guy in school. I mean having the kind of life most people don't even think about because it's, well, normal. You get invited to places occasionally, and you text your friends to play sometimes. Someone noticing your existence. You have that one group chat that's somehow still alive after 5 years. That's normie status. And if you've had that your whole life, there's a good chance you've never realized how much of dating actually happens outside of dating. Because most people think relationships start when you ask someone out, but half the time they start months before that. For example, you go to a party and someone sees you, then a mutual friend mentions your name. You end up in the same group often enough that you stop being a stranger. That's how most people meet. being at school or at work. That's just the reality. A lot of guys online act like every relationship begins with some cold approach in the middle of Walmart. It usually doesn't. Statistics back it up. That's top 1 or top 2 way people meet, 'cause of online dating that may change. But most of the time it's just proximity. That's why having a normal social circle is such a massive advantage. You don't have to manually create opportunities because life keeps creating them for you. Meanwhile, someone who's been isolated for years has to create every single interaction from scratch. And when I mean every time, I mean it. Every conversation to every introduction, every first impression, there's no momentum carrying him forward. And after a while, that's exhausting. It's like everyone else got to build their social life brick by brick, while you're standing there wondering where you're even supposed to find the first brick. You can even bend the interest of someone because of that, which is precisely the next point. You'd bend the interest of someone at least once. This one doesn't even require you to notice it. Like, yeah, maybe she never told you. It doesn't matter. Maybe your friends figured it out before you did. Or you only found out 3 years later when somebody casually said, "Wait, you seriously didn't know she liked you?" Doesn't matter. If it's happened at least once, I'm gonna have to take another point away. Yeah, think about the past. Can you find a moment like that? Is it possible for somebody to genuinely wanted you? I bet most of y'all found at least one girl that showed a lil interest. If that happened to you, maybe you are not that much of a incel as you thought. A Truecel doesn't have that. He's not asking himself, will I find the right person? He's still trying to answer a much earlier question. Is there even a person? Most of them have already lost all hope. And again, those are 2 completely different lives to live. Well, let's keep going. Next point is having friends you can actually rely on. And I mean real friends, 'cause you can have 500,000 Instagram followers and still be a friendless loser. I'm talking about the kind of friend you'd call at 2 in the morning because something went horribly wrong, or chat about anything with all the confidence in the world. If you've got someone like that, yeah, another point gone. One thing I think people underestimate is just how much good friends protect your mental health without even realizing it. A good friend will usually drag you outside when you've been rotting in your room for too long, at least if they know that you are doing it. They make fun of you, and you will make fun of them, 'cause y'all know you can trust each other. Most of the time, you don't even know how much you are protecting each other. They're just there, and that's all that matter. To be honest, this one hits hard, 'cause when you start to think about it, most people this day don't have that kind of friendship. Statistics show that the average guy don't have close friends like this. I've been blessed with good friends. In my case, they're not just people to make me company. They consistently try to push me out of my misery. So I high-key recommend you to seek for this kind of people. I know how hard it is, but after you take care about your looks and a little bit of your social skills, you can make great progress at this. Trust bro, that's wizard's advice. Normies don't realize that being lonely isn't just about not having a girlfriend. That's why I don't really buy the idea that Truecels are only lonely because they can't get a partner. Usually the loneliness started way before that. Dating is just the part people notice. Everything else had already been falling apart for years, which gets me to the next point. You can't be a Truecel if you are lacking real isolation. I think this is the biggest difference between a Fakecel and a Truecel. And it is all about, this video went revolving around. Real isolation doesn't always look dramatic, like the guy from Smiling Friends with a Gun. It's usually painfully ordinary, like the classic setup. You wake up, then go to school, move to your work, and came home. I'm not talking about having a week or a month where you don't socialize. I'm talking about years of being away from interaction. I once heard this comparison that for criminals, the worst of society, when they misbehave in prison, do you know what's the punishment for them? They isolate them. And you're doing this on a daily basis. But yeah, being a Truecel is nothing to flex with. If you made it this far in the video, know that I love you for staying this long. Please subscribe, comment, and all of those YouTubers shit. Wizard out.